Dallas Mavericks got the deal done, as all the NBA insiders were suggesting, and one of them, part of my favorite NBA podcast. This is what I take naps to. Not an insult. Not an insult. I try to stay awake.
I'm not sure he would take it like that.
You got Bontemps, you got Windhorst, and Tim MacMahon from ESPN on the D&M Leasing Hotline here on 105.3 The Fan. Good morning, Tim. Thanks for joining us.
Howdy, partners. Take naps. That's all right, because I rarely wake up in time to hear you boys.
Yeah, I've been noticing Windhorst. Well, he was a little snippy last week. I thought he was this innocent Satan. Woo, I could tell when he's running on no sleep. He was a little snippy, I thought.
He's always running on no sleep, so he's increasingly snippy, but that's part of the deal.
Tim, does it feel like this could be the missing piece for the Mavericks to match Boston or be closer than they were in the finals? How do you think Mavs fans should be feeling today?
Well, look, obviously the lack of three-point shooting caught up to the Mavericks in the finals. You've just added one of the all-time great catch-and-shoot guys, one of the best three-point shooters to ever play the game. Now, obviously, Klay Thompson is not in his prime. If he was in his prime, then it's $50 million a year, not $50 million over 3 years.
Yeah.
There are some questions in terms of, okay, how do you build the kind of defense that they had late last season through the playoffs with Klay in the starting lineup next to Luke and Kyrie? But hey, this is the Western Conference champions being aggressive and upgrading their roster. So I think you've got to give the Mavericks a lot of credit for having a plan. Give Nico Harrison a lot of credit for being able to execute the plan. How many times have the Mavericks swung and missed on big name free agents? And again, you can say, well, Klay's not the superstar that he used to be. Well, that's all fine and good, but the simple fact of the matter is the Mavericks were recruiting against the Lakers. The Lakers offered more years for a larger salary, and Klay Thompson's coming to Dallas. So pretty significant accomplishment there. And then again, I think look, this might be the best offense in the NBA next season. Like the Mavericks might set the record for the most efficient offense in NBA history, because that's a record that seems to get broken every year now. The question is, can they be not an elite defense, but an above average to good defense? And if they are, who knows? Anything's possible.
What was he last year defensively, Tim? You can look at the metrics and the different numbers that tell you stories, but what did you see with your eyes, or what do you trust about what Klay was and still will be defensively? Is he serviceable? Is he good? Is he below average?
Well, and this is something that I've asked a lot of scouts that these last couple of days, and the answer that I get back is average, maybe a bit below at this point. And look, Klay at his best, he's been an all-defensive player, but obviously that was in his 20s. That was before a torn ACL, before a ruptured Achilles. I'll say this: he's a significantly better defense player still than Tim Hardaway Jr. was, despite the fact that Josh Green is young and athletic. He's a better defensive player right now than Josh Green was last season. And, I think the other thing, when you're looking at Klay defensively last year, again, there are physical challenges, clearly. He was miserable last year in Golden State. There's a lot of reporting out there on just how difficult the season was from a psychological perspective for him. And kind of, it was a long, dragged-out divorce process, essentially. So, it'll be interesting to see how he looks on that end of the floor, refreshed, re-energized, and really feeling valued and appreciated with the Mavericks. But is he going to be a stopper? No. Will they miss Derek Jones Jr. as far as the primary defender on some of the elite guards that you're going to face seemingly night after night in the Western Conference? I think there's times that they will, but they think Derek Lively II has a chance to be an absolute defensive stud, not just your kind of traditional defensive anchor, but I've had people there compare him to a Kevin Garnett or a Joakim Noah in terms of centers who can really impact the game defensively all over the floor, not just in the paint. There's going to be a lot on his plate. Najee Marshall, that was a good signing. That was if things got complicated with Jones like they did, that was a good pivot I think a guy like Dante Exum is going to be a little bit more important next year just because he is a pretty good on-ball defender. But that's the puzzle they've got to figure out. How can they make this a decent to good defense? Because offensively,
Yeah.
you've got the best playmaking duo in the league. And, say what you want about, hey, Klay's not what he used to be. What he is a guy who can launch high-volume threes at a high percentage. And I guarantee you this, if he's standing out past the three-point line, you're guarding him, and that's going to open up the floor for Luka and Kyrie to go to work.
Tim, is there anything else they can do, or are they pretty strapped at this point?
There's always more that they can do. Nico Harrison is really trying to be very cautious with doing anything with the first-round pick. They now have 25 and 31, technically available to trade. But that's all they have. So they're going to be very selective there. They have an open roster spot. Not to get super geeky, but they're basically limited to a minimum salary in that spot. Maybe it's bringing back Markieff Morris, kind of as that locker room OG. He was a very valued voice last year. The other thing that I could see is going after a guard, an on-ball defender type of guard who maybe slips through the cracks and is available for the minimum. And I tell you, your old buddy Dennis Smith Jr., if he's available for the minimum down the road,
wow,
he's become a pit bull defensively. I don't know if he will be. I don't know, if he's going to be able to find more money somewhere else. I can say, though, there are people who are still fans of Dennis in the organization. Him and Luka are still buddies. And again, this is not about lottery pick Dennis Smith Jr. This is about, hey, you could use another guard on the roster, especially one who's a pit bull defensively. He would make a lot of sense to me.
Tim, what do you say to the style question of, ISO ball here, give it to Luka or Kyrie, and Klay coming from that motion warrior system? What do you say to Tim Legler and those who are bringing that up as I think a very good point about Klay going from that offense to this offense?
Well, number one, I'm not going to try to match X's and O's wits with Tim Legler. Right? I think he probably is going to be able to have a bit of advantage on me in that regard. But look, they're going to get Klay shots. Yeah. Like if Tim Hardaway Jr. got a bunch of shots when he was on the floor, trust me, Klay Thompson's going to touch the ball. Klay Thompson's going to get not just three-point looks, but in a lot of cases, clean three-point looks. And if you're running pick and roll, Luka and Lively and Klay's on the weak side, that seems like it could be pretty tough. The one thing that the Mavericks did last year that honestly I didn't believe would happen. Jay Kidd told us it was going to happen in training camp. I'm like, yeah, right. And it did. And that was they played fast. They were the seventh fastest paced team in the league, which, I was like, not playing fast for Luka, but Luka bought into it. And my point is, if they're playing fast, if they're pushing it, there's going to be threes that present themselves and opportunities that present themselves to Klay in those semi-transition. And look, if he hadn't touched in a while, will they sometimes run a play for him? Absolutely. They didn't go out and recruit Klay just to have him, stand out on the wing and pick his nose. Mm-hmm. But stylistically, it's going to be I'm sure that there will be an adjustment for him. But again, I think that they're going to figure out ways to make sure that he is involved and being maximized on the offensive end of the floor.
ESPN NBA Insider Hoop Collective podcast, Tim MacMahon here on Shan and RJ, 105.3 The Fan. What influence did Kyrie have on this, and what are you hearing about Luka's reaction to Klay?
Well, Luka's obviously busy. He's over in Europe. Actually, they've got an Olympic qualifying tournament game today, but my understanding is he's ecstatic. But look, the one thing that Luka isn't and might never be is a recruiter, right? He just doesn't have the same type of relationships you typically see from guys in that role. He doesn't have necessarily that kind of personality. Kyrie does. And Kyrie has a relationship with Klay Thompson. They've won a World Cup gold medal together. They won an Olympic gold medal together. Obviously, they've competed against each other at the highest level in finals. And Kyrie was, I'm not going to say he was the lead recruiter, like you have to give Nico Harrison his due here, but Kyrie was a significant part of the process. And I talked to his agent and stepmom, Chatelia Riley Irving, yesterday, and basically what she told me is, with Kyrie, it's really not trying to sell Klay on, hey, here's why you should come to Dallas, but it's just having kind of honest, authentic conversations about, hey, where are you in life? What are you looking for? And I think the message that Kyrie really gave to Klay is, what I found here in Dallas to this point is a sense of family. And my understanding is they didn't talk a lot about the way things ended for Kyrie in Brooklyn, the way things ended for Klay in Golden State. But the simple fact is, at both of their last stops, different circumstances, but they both felt underappreciated, disrespected. And things have obviously really worked out for Kyrie here. He's happy. They just came off a finals appearance. And Klay's looking for that same kind of that same kind of opportunity for, not to get all hippy dippy, but peace and happiness.
Tim, I saw a post from our boy Chuck Cooperstein saying that this puts to bed the idea the Mavs can't sign big names. Does it, or because he's not in his prime, does this not really count?
Well, listen, you can debate, is he a star still, all those sort of things. But the simple fact of the matter is, it was Mavericks versus Lakers for a big-name free agent, and the most glamorous franchise in the NBA had more years at a higher salary on the table. Now, the Lakers are going to have to jump through hoops to make that happen, but they were talking about a 4-year, $80 million deal with Klay. The Mavericks had 3 for $50. He chose to come to Dallas. That's the idea that Dallas is just some no-way destination for free agents. Yes, that's off the table. Now, how many times are the Mavericks going to be able to be in this sort of a situation moving forward? We'll see. Obviously, Luka's going to be on a supermax for a while. It's not like they're going to be a team that just has a ton of cap space. But the idea that free agents don't want to come to Dallas, or guys don't want to play with Luka, I do think that's off the table.
Tim, what is the exchange here and what you gain from Najee and Grimes compare with what you lost in Jones? And for my own selfish purposes, can you explain what happened with Derrick Jones Jr. leaving for essentially the same deal they gave Najee Marshall? What happened there?
I honestly, it's not quite the same deal. It is a few $1 million more. But the explanation that I was given for things really getting complicated with him doesn't necessarily match up, because there is a 15-day mandatory wait when you change agents.
Yeah, but he didn't have to wait for LA.
Yeah, but that's not the way things played out. That was kind of blown through. But look, they are in a tight cap situation, not just a cap situation, but with the first apron and the hard cap and a whole bunch of things that are boring and you need an accounting degree to understand. I think 27 was as high as they were going to go. Obviously, that's what Najee Marshall got. And I believe that it came down to a situation where, they felt like Jones wasn't a sure thing anymore. And when they had an opportunity to add Najee Marshall and get that done and know they had that slot filled, they went ahead and pounced on it. And, talking to scouts around the league, there's a lot of them who've told me they feel like the Mavericks actually upgraded that spot. A big key here was the way Najee shot the ball last year was at the beginning of a trend, like when Dorian Finney-Smith had his breakout 3-point season, or was that kind of a blip on the radar, an exception? But he's a better shooter. He's a guy who's capable of doing more with the ball. Extremely tough. Now, can he be as good as Jones was as the primary defender on the Ja Morant, not the Ja was a factor this year, but all the Shai Gilgeous-Alexanders, all these elite, quick playmaking guards? That probably not. I think he's more Dorian Finney-Smith than he was Derrick Jones Jr., but he's a tough dude. You know, that's the thing you always hear. This dude is a dog. There's toughness. They loved him in New Orleans. They just got to a situation where because of the hard cap, they couldn't pay him. You know, I think that was a good pivot instead of risking not being able to have either. But again, I don't want to diminish what Derrick Jones Jr. meant to this team on the defensive end of the floor, especially late last season and through the playoffs.
Tim MacMahon, ESPN here on The Fan. What has impressed you in talking to him, or what you've heard, or just the actions themselves and the moves from Nico?
You know, I would say just having a plan and being aggressive to execute it, and just, you know, kind of having the belief and, you know, the follow through. And again, they've been in situations where they've been able to sit down with free agents before. They've never been able to get it over the finish line when there was real competition, I would say. So yeah, you have to give him credit there. But, you know, going back to when he went out and made the move for Kyrie, which obviously that was a move that was heavily questioned at the time, and even more so when it didn't go well, you know, for the first few months. They end up in the lottery. And his thing was, look, we have the duo. We've got to figure out how to build around them. And piece by piece, you know, he's done that well enough to get to the finals, and then, you know, to take these swings where they think that they're upgrading the finals roster.
Thank you so much for the time, man. I appreciate it. Keep killing it on the podcast. You'll be in my ears later on today in a few hours.
No, I appreciate it, brothers.